Sure do. Yeah, I do wear a few different kind of hats in this community. Last time I was up here talking about multi-QC, but now I'm talking about NF Core. So, yeah, this is kind of a regular slot now at the Nextflow meetings since, since the start of these meetings, really, about the start of NF Core, and try and do a kind of little sort of State of the Union type thing. Is probably the most difficult talk I have to give every year. How do you sum up the contributions of such a huge and active community in one slot? So I do a really bad job of it. I'm sorry about that. Anyone who I miss. But I try and pick out just a few highlights and a few things that have changed over the year to talk about. Firstly, as everyone knows, NF Core is growing, still growing fast. The curve keeps kind of going up and up, and we don't seem to have run out of bioinformaticians yet, which is good. And we hit some nice milestones this year. So anyone following us on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, will have seen this little guy pop up a couple of months ago. We recently passed over 10,000 people registered on the NF Core Slack. I'll just let that sink in. 10,000 people. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. I remember passing 100 followers on Twitter and thinking, wow, this is getting really big. I checked just before I came up on stage, we're now at over 10,300 members on the NF Core Slack. We have so many people signing up, it becomes problematic because the NF Core Slack invite only allows 400 people per invite, and it's starting to run out like every few weeks. So yeah, it's phenomenal growth and phenomenal enthusiasm, and the kind of critical mass, the momentum that such a large and active community carries, it really shows, and you see that in the talks that we've seen today and yesterday. There's so much good work coming out of this community. There's so much collaboration. It's a real pleasure to see and a real pleasure to be part of that. The number of people just signed up doesn't tell you that much by itself. I mean, there's obviously plenty of people who come in, ask a question, get help, and then are happy and never come back again. That's a success in my eyes, really. But we also have, you can look at kind of how many people are active all the time, and we have over 2,000 people logging into the NF Core Slack every month, and over 500 people posting in public channels. Actually, only about 30 to 40% of messages on a Slack are in public channels, I think. There's a huge amount of discussion that goes on in direct messages between people, and a lot of kind of unseen collaboration. And this is just the NF Core Slack. This is not including the Nextflow Slack or the community forum. This was touched on by Björn in his talk earlier today. Another big kind of milestone that we hit in the community is a new manuscript, a new journal paper. It's in preprint stage at the moment, and Björn is the first author, but it was a really collaborative writing experience. Involved many people in the NF Core team, many people from the Eurofang and BOVREG consortia. It was really nice, kind of Google Docs, loads of cursors everywhere kind of experience. And anyone who's interested, it kind of talks a bit about Björn's story of Eurofang, but also talks about some of the changes in the community structures and the way that we've managed to scale the NF Core community over the past few years. So it's a really good read. I recommend looking out for that. And probably, as Björn showed, the key takeaway figure from that is just the impact that Nextflow is having. There are many ways to look at this, but journal citations is really a strong indicator of scientific impact. It's a very lagging indicator because papers take a long time to write. So the fact that we see this really strong trend in a number of journals papers coming out using Nextflow is a really, really strong indicator of a healthy community and a growing community. One of the initiatives that we kicked off this year was special interest groups. I just realized now I forgot to put it in, but there's a blog post announcing this earlier in the year, and it's got a kind of a figure I put together where we have all the different pipelines in NF Core, well over 100 of them now, and there's a channel for each pipeline, and they sort of form mini communities around each pipeline. But what we found was that there are people who are working across many pipelines, as is true with many of you in this room, I believe, using RNA-seq and ChIP-seq and ATAC-seq, or different combinations, but maybe focusing on specific types of species or specific types of data analysis across pipelines. And so we felt that there was this need for having a way to organize people and people find one another, not just on pipeline or analysis type, but also on kind of scientific research field. So together with the kind of existing Eurofang consortia group that had formed organically, and then the core team and steering groups movements, we started off this initiative of having these special interest groups. Coming up with a name took months, but hopefully it's clear what the intention is here. And we've heard 3 talks today from people who have mentioned the special interest groups working on very different topics. There's a 4th also about neuroimaging, who are sadly not here today, and interest from several other people about creating new ones in the future. If this sounds interesting to you, I really strongly recommend going and checking it out on the NF Core blog to read more about how it works and proposing a new interest group. There's space for many, many more. And I think this is really, as the community grows to such a large degree, it's impossible to know everyone and see all the messages in all channels at all times. So this is a really good way to kind of bring together people with similar interests, similar problems, similar experiences to further that collaboration beyond just pipeline code, but also into things like regulatory systems and combinations of pipelines. Okay, try to pick out a few highlights. This is a bit of a collaborative effort amongst some of the teams, and I'm going to do my best. Firstly, I wanted just to give a note to the hackathon that we did this week. These numbers were mentioned before, but it is, again, phenomenal. We had 146 people registered for a single in-person hackathon, which is by far a record, again. I stood on the stage and said that several times. I think 2022, the summit, we had about 50, which was a record. I think 2023, we had about 100, which was a record. And so you can see the step. Every time we do these in-person hackathons is brilliant to see. And then the training, which was new for this summit, this Barcelona summit, 60 people. So I'm really excited to see where we go next and whether we can find a room big enough. We had a lot of fun in the hackathon. I just grabbed a bit of a random selection. I don't know if you'll be able to, hopefully big enough for you to see, just to sort of see the different little kind of groups of people having fun and doing silly things and eating apple-shaped cookies and answering quiz. And the one along the bottom was Maxime led us all through a bit of a stretching and exercise regime halfway through to make sure our backs didn't fall. So it was a really good time. I had a really fun time, and hopefully those of you in the room who joined us will back me up on that. We changed a few things with this hackathon. In order to be able to scale, we had slightly different structure of forming groups, and you can see people holding up little placards there for different kind of hackathon groups that they were working within. And I think that went really well, so I'm hoping to repeat that again in the future. Of course, we did a lot of work, but the real strength of the NF Core community is in creating memes. And did not disappoint again this year. We have wrap-up slides at the end of the day for any of you not been to a hackathon before, and we really encourage people to try and make them entertaining as possible, and yeah, that was good. It's one of the things that has come out in the last year and a half, maybe, NF Core has always been a very flat, grassroots kind of organization, but as we've kind of grown, we've had to have some degree of kind of governance to try and keep everything organized, basically. We've had the core team from the start, and these people basically kind of have the keys to everything and try and help everyone and organize everything, manage all the different day-to-day things that need to get done to make NF Core work. Many of us have been kicking around for a fair while, so you'll recognize our faces, but we try and keep the team a bit fresh. And this year we invited in 4 new members to the core team. Again, many of them have been in the community for a long time, that's why they're there. But I wanted to sort of take this opportunity to say welcome to them. Thank you for stepping up and doing what you do. And thank you to the whole core team, because it's a huge commitment. We put a massive amount of time into making NF Core work. There's a lot that goes in behind the scenes. And you know, hopefully, I think the impact is clear. So thank you, everyone on the core team. It's no longer just a core team, though. So there's a governance page now, if you go to the NF Core website, on the drop-down menu at the top, where you can see how the organization of NF Core is structured. We have the core team. We also have a steering committee for kind of high-level things about funding and any disputes. And we also have a maintainers team. And the maintainers team we put together basically to try and help us with some of the maintenance tasks, which as more and more pipelines come in all the time, there's just a lot of kind of moderation work and things that needs to be done, and help also distribute and democratize the decisions that get made about the best practices which we encourage everyone to use. So I want to say a huge thanks to that maintainers team, and yeah, if you're interested in becoming part of that, then please have a look at the governance page and post on Slack, and we'll be pointed in the right direction. Of course, the real hard work is talking about naming things, talking the classic joke about difficult things in programming being concurrency, naming things and concurrency. And the maintainers team live up to that well and truly, spending a long time debating how things can be named properly, and it's important work. We've got a new blog on the NF Core website this year, and there's a few different kind of articles that pop up there. Julia mentioned that we've started doing blog posts when there are new releases of the NF Core tools CLI and a template explaining what's coming out. Another kind of common blog post you'll see there are notes from the maintainers team. And this is, again, to sort of try and democratize the process of the decision-making around these best practices. So if you're interested about what the maintainers team have been discussing, what GIFs they've been making, and other important matters, then you can have a look on the blog and see the kinds of things that they're up to. I asked the core team if there's anyone who I should kind of give an honourable mention to in the community who's really gone the extra mile this year. And there are a few names that came up unanimously very quickly, so I just wanted to give a quick nod to a few individuals. It's not usually something I do. I try and kind of think about the whole community as a whole, but really these people deserve kind of extra mention. Simon and Usman especially, I'm going to kick off with, have done a huge amount of work working on the NF Core module system. So anyone working with these shared modules, we've got a lot to say thank you to them for keeping them up to date and pushing through a lot of hard work, getting tests up and running and functional again. Nico and Carson got mentioned as being a really great example of people coming into the community relatively recently, kind of training themselves up on Nextflow, becoming experts, but not stopping there, kind of really getting involved and stuck into the community and maintaining team pipelines and getting really involved. So a big hand out to them as well, to Nico and Carson. And finally, I put these two in. I think Mahesh and Pontus have been around in the Nextflow community for a long time, both based in Sweden. And I think I really want to say thank you to them both. I know Mahesh is sat down here. They put a lot of time into answering questions on the community. And I'm particularly grateful because they usually answer the questions that I don't know the answers to. So Mahesh is a wizard when it comes to kind of Nextflow channels and syntax, and Pontus really has a fantastic knowledge of HPC infrastructure and containers and things. So I'm sure many of you here will have had questions answered by the two of them. So big thanks to them. And then there are a few more names, but too many to go into one by one, so I just want to say thank you to everyone up here for also going the extra mile with various different things to do with maintenance and help. Much appreciated. Okay, I'm going to go through a few updates which kind of happened within the community over the past months. This has been a bit of a difficult procedure because there's been quite a lot of talks about NF Core, which is great. So I've tried to kind of pick out things which maybe got skirted around or missed, and are kind of, but are at the same time relatively universal and impact everyone working in the community. So we'll see how we go. The first category of things has been the website. So this is really kind of focusing especially on the infrastructure team. Matthias especially, and he spent a lot of time working on the NF Core website the past year. I think it was this time last year I said we rebuilt the website from scratch from my old ancient PHP scripts up into a new web framework, Astro, and that work has continued this year. There's been a huge amount of refactoring work to make it more performant, keep things, we got, I think it was almost a 20-minute build time for the website down to a couple of minutes, so you get your deployment previews nice and quickly, and just basically kind of being on hand and keeping that working is really a key part of the community. We've also rolled out the blog posts for the website, which is a great way to sort of share information with the community, and done work, which is just really the first step in a long road in trying to improve the documentation base of NF Core. So Matthias and I had a really fun two-person hackathon. We're both in Sweden, so he came around to my garage where I work. The two of us turned Slack off and I was like, right, let's do this. And we kind of moved the documentation around a lot, tried to organize it a bit. It's still got a long way to go, but we have hopefully improved matters a little bit. So stay tuned for more improvements in that direction in the coming year. And then this was mentioned, but I think it's really important, the process of helping people through template updates. We know that updating pipelines to new versions of a template is a bit of a difficult process sometimes, and it can be frustrating when you kind of think you're finished and then a new template comes out and you have to go back and update. For me, it's pain that's worth it because that's what keeps us all up to date. That's what keeps us all on the same page with best practices. But everything we can do to help, I think we should do. And as part of that, we've started writing, well, Matthias and Julia have started writing blog posts, social media, and also recently starting doing videos where they basically record themselves updating one of the NF Core pipelines. Because if you watch that, then you often know that, okay, merge conflicts in that file don't matter, I can ignore that and just overwrite it. And there's different tips and tricks that you can do to make the whole process easier. On the tool CLI itself, we've heard about the template customization features and the graphical interfaces. We've also changed the template and we removed the lib directory, which was quite a major change to the NF Core template. And in the Python code that is behind all of the tooling, we've also done modernization, kind of similar to what I was saying with multi-QC earlier, kind of bringing it all up to date, up to best practices, adding in a lot of variable type hinting, and adding in a lot of unit tests to try and make the code a bit more robust and less vulnerable to regressions. I've put in a little background here. You can see us how far through we are on with the type hinting, I think. So we're not completely there yet, but it's real kind of significant progress. And again, it's kind of hard work, which is very much appreciated. I reached out to the maintainers team and pipeline maintainers and asked them how we were doing with migration to NF test. And I'm very pleasantly surprised to hear that we've got NF tests set up for nearly all of the shared NF Core modules now, 1,111, which is amazing work. So yeah, well done everyone. And so you can see why I was anxious when Lucas got asked about changing the interface to inputs. But it's a huge amount of code there, and that unit testing is really, really powerful and means that it gives a great deal of trust to the code that we're writing. We've also brought in NF test for sub-workflows, and we've done a good proportion of those now, and work continues on that front. And quite recently, we've started using NF test at the pipeline level test. Somewhat amazingly, until now, all of our pipeline CI pretty much just runs the pipeline and sees if it crashes or not, which is surprisingly effective. But we can do better with NF test. We can check the actual output files being generated, validate that things haven't changed when that's not expected, and now we kind of have a process in place for doing that with NF Core pipelines with some new features from NF test as well, and we'll begin to roll that out across all NF Core pipelines as standard soon. Lucas also mentioned the new plugin system for NF test, and out of the NF Core community, we've seen a couple of plugins already to help people with these processes, NFT BAM and NFT utils especially, and I think there's scope for many more of those. So if that's interesting, then dive into Slack and talk to the people doing those, because these plugins can really facilitate easier, simpler tests to write, which helps everybody. On the shared NF Core modules, these kind of Lego bricks that everybody can use to build pipelines, we've done a few updates. we are trying to bring in stub tests for all modules so that you can run very, very quick tests without actually running the software, these little stub blocks. Good progress there. We've changed the way that Conda channels are used slightly. We've dropped the defaults channel because of a recent furore around Anaconda licensing of a defaults channel. So that's gone from everywhere now. As everyone involved in the hackathon may have seen, we're working with the meta.yaml file that goes with each module and updating that and improving that so that it better describes the code in that module. And soon we want to bring in ontologies. So we want to link out to existing ontology systems such as EDAM, also BioTools, to describe the inputs and outputs of each module. So we already know that maybe it's a .bam file coming out of this output, but EDAM ontologies kind of take us a step further with that. We can associate an ID, and then maybe that describes the type of BAM file, and it gives really rich information. And we're building tooling around that, or Julia's building tooling around that so that it will kind of suggest and help you through with like CLI tooling to give that annotation information into the modules. And I think that will really help, hopefully, building pipelines and doing things like maybe chaining pipelines and things. So stay tuned. And then software. This is something that's come up quite a lot. Seqera containers and whether we want to use them in NF Core and things. There's 2 blog posts excuse me, that I co-wrote with Edmund, which went out quite recently, which are some of the longer, more detailed blog posts I've written for a while, which really went into, the first one goes into motivation for whether we want to move to Seqera containers within NF Core and why and what benefits that might bring. And then the second one is much more like a technical roadmap of how we may go about doing that. The feedback so far from the community seems to have been pretty positive. So I think unless there's any major objections in the very near future, I think we'll start moving in that direction in the coming months and start porting basically all of the NF Core modules over to use Seqera containers, at least all of the ones which have Conda files, which is almost all of them. By doing this, we get a series of really nice benefits. We have the Conda lock files, which were mentioned by Paolo. So we can run the container builds using Wave, which backs Seqera containers. Install all of the software defined in the Conda package in that Linux environment, for example, and download the lock file of the resolved Conda environment. We can then provide that lock file to users using a pipeline using Conda. And that's great because 2 things. It means that people don't have to spend time waiting for Conda to resolve locally, so it's faster. And it's also much more reproducible because one of the problems we see with Conda is that the dependency stacks underneath software tools change over time, which can break things. It breaks a lot of our CI tests and also can harm reproducibility. By moving to a system where by default people use lock files, it should be much more reproducible over time and hopefully leading to better science. We're also going to roll out multi-package and multi-architecture containers for all software that we can. So anyone who wants to run on Graviton, it's great news, or any other ARM processors, because we will hopefully soon routinely be building container images and also Conda lock files for both Linux, ARM, and Arch. And that's a kind of a process we intend to keep going down that route as much as possible. So that's going to really open things up to working on much more kind of customized compute infrastructure. And then this is all pretty complicated stuff, but the good news is we think we can automate almost all of it, which is great news for any of you working as developers, because you don't have to think about any of this. All you have to do is go into your Conda file, add your package to your Conda environment, and everything will just kick off automatically. We will build Singularity, we'll build Docker, we will build Conda lock files, we'll build ARM, Arch, we'll build all this different software for you, lock it all down here, all provenance, metadata, security scanning, all of that good stuff will just happen automatically from that one little change to a package name. And we'll be able to leverage the full power of Wave and Seqera containers within the NF Core community at basically no effort, in fact, much less effort than what was currently being done. And we're going to hopefully even take this a step further by using an open source tool called Renovate, which can look for updates in Conda packages and automatically trigger this itself. So if I drop a new, or Vlad does a new release of multi-QC, it will appear on Bioconda, that will be picked up by Renovate, it will update the Conda environment file, which will trigger new containers and open a pull request to NF Core modules, and it will just go So this will hopefully save a lot of time for maintainers. Okay. Final thing, I want to talk about some of the new initiatives that we're kind of rolling out now and soon, less on the software side, but more on the kind of community side. Firstly, we did a trial of something that we called, again, naming things is hard, something we initially called office hours, we're now calling weekly help desk, where basically developers in the NF Core community who have been around a bit longer book off some time on their calendar where they're going to work on NF Core tasks, and they just hop into a Zoom call or GatherTown to do that work. And if no one turns up, that's fine, they haven't lost anything, but it makes them available to anyone in the NF Core community or beyond to just join them. That could be if you need help. Maybe you're stuck against a problem and you just want to talk through it with someone. It could be if you're new to the community and you kind of just want a bit of advice or want pointing to the right part of the docs. Maybe you don't need any help, but you just would like to sit with someone else. It's kind of like a mini hackathon that happens every week. So it was kind of pretty good feedback, but not very well attended in the first one. But it was enough for us to think we would like to keep doing this. But I really encourage everyone to make use of this resource, make use of the time that people are putting in here, and then we'll be encouraged to keep going. And we already have volunteers for the next few months to run in 2 different kind of time-friendly times, both 10 in the morning Central European time and 2 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's a regular slot, put it in your calendar, block it off for working on Nextflow and NF Core, and drop in and just socialize if that's what you'd like to do. Mentorships. I'm really happy to say that we are planning to restart the NF Core Mentorships program in 2025. This was, for those of you maybe newer to the community, this was something we did in previous years using funding that we got from the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. When that funding expired, the mentorships stopped. We've been having lots of inquiries from people saying, is it going to happen again? I'd love to join, I'd love to do this. It's a really valuable experience both for mentors, but also mentees, but also mentors who've often found new collaborators to do this. There's a number of blog posts on the Nextflow blog about this, so you can read more about it if you'd like. There's also a page on the NF Core website. I don't have any details yet, but I can confirm it's definitely going to kick off again next year, which I'm very happy about. Okay, and then I think this is almost the last slide or close. I want to just mention that we are aware of, I was going to say inadequacies, I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, improvements that we'd like to make with both test data and reference genomes in NF Core, both of which were kind of set up pretty much at the start of NF Core, and there's definitely scope and ideas for how to improve these. If you're interested in either of these, please get in touch. There's a Slack channel for a working group, test data task force. It's kind of a little bit like special interest groups, but kind of task force to work on specific things. And likely one soon for reference genomes as well. There's been some progress made there with a GitHub repo already. If this is interesting to you or if it affects your work, please do get involved. And of course, shop. Some of you may have been wondering when I came on stage wearing such a lovely hoodie. Well, I got such things. This one isn't just swag from an event. This one I actually bought with my own money. And the good news is, now you can too. Something that people have been asking us for years and years and years is there somewhere I can get swag? I couldn't get to that event. I would love to have a sticker or a mug or something. And now you can. I haven't shown it here, but if you go to the NF Core website and you use the drop-down nav at the top, you'll now see shop, and it says new. If you click on that, you will be presented with a page which has a bit of information about how it works. Says stuff like we don't make any money from it. And then we'll redirect you hopefully to a local store in your region where you can pay in your own currency and hopefully have relatively reasonable shipping rates. And it's all printed on demand, so we don't have to keep inventory or anything like that. Basically, we set it up and then it just runs itself by a company and we don't have to be involved at all. But it was fun to set up. You can get all kinds of different things. with your favorite pipeline logos. This is why everyone's going crazy for the pipeline logos now. I see your plan. And various other designs, stickers, all kinds of different things. And we would love to have more kind of creative design ideas. Some of you may have seen Fran walking around with a t-shirt with this lovely Metro map design that she did. So if you've got ideas, then jump on Slack. I think we might have a shop channel, and we'd love to see your designs. Yes, oh yeah, final thing, sorry. Just to finish up, I want to do a plug for the next big thing. So in 2025, the next hackathon will be an online/distributed event, and we've already set the date, so you can already book this off on your calendar today, March 24th to 26th. And this will be an online hackathon, but also with local sites. And this is something that we did for the first time this year, and we kind of put the call out, having very little idea if anyone would really do this, if it would just be online, or what the response would be. And the response was phenomenal. It absolutely blew us away. We had 23 people ran local sites in their cities and institutes all the way around the world. There was definitely a bit of a European focus, but there were sites all the way around the world. And over 500 people turned up to these locations. And that's not counting the people who also joined online remotely. So, I mean, in terms of in-person attendance, this is actually the real record holder, all the way around the world at once, hacking together on NF Core projects. It was a fantastic event. You can see a few photos here. The sock hunt, which happened online with crazy mazes, and different people kind of clustered around tables and getting pizzas. And then a special shout out to James and Thesis for putting an amazing video together. I've turned the sound off, but you can hear them singing if you dig onto it, of course, Slack. So it was a lot of fun in 2024, and hopefully 2025 will be even bigger and better and more geographically distributed. So please put it in your calendar and start thinking about it now. Book out the meeting rooms at your local venue, and let's see if we can do something cool together. Oh yeah, Nextflow podcast, just wanted to say that it exists on Spotify and all your favorite places to listen to podcasts. It's about Nextflow, but of course we talk about NF Core a lot. And there's a bunch of podcast titles here which may or may not be relevant. The top one hasn't actually gone out yet. That's on Tuesday next week. But it's going to be about the new language server and VS Code extension. So if you liked what you saw earlier, you can join to hear all the nitty-gritty details, me and Ben discussing it, and some other things there. And yeah, that's it. With that, a huge thank you.